I got another one. What?
I want to hear where this one's going to go.
Well, no, this one's going, it's a good place. It's a positive. It's very positive. Peter writes, "Hi, Jim. I hope all is well. I'm a 45-year-old man living in Maine who was born and raised in New Orleans, or Nolans. My earliest recollection of wrestling was my dad taking me to the Municipal Auditorium to see Mid-South Wrestling. There are a few things I remember about those events, but the one thing I remember most was seeing the dog. My dad had to hold me because when JYD came out, the entire balcony would shake. And believe me, if you've been in that building, ladies and gentlemen, at the age of it, the balcony shaking was scary. I don't remember at the time if he came out to Another One Bites the Dust. He was. But I remember everyone would be dancing. It's hard to explain how huge JYD was to today's wrestling fan because I can't think of a wrestler today that would get that type of reaction. It's not even close. To me, JYD was our Black Superman. Thank you for your time." Well, thank you for your email, Peter.
And for the record, depending on how old he is and when he went, there was a time in 1983 where it wasn't Another One Bites the Dust, it was Atomic Dog.
Oh, God, that's right. But thankfully he went back because I didn't think it had the oomph.
No, I think it hurt him, actually.
Yeah, it was iconic. You didn't need to change the presentation. But anyway, nevertheless, the point being, I guess maybe I can try to understand why that the younger fans can't understand what we're talking about and why we just piss on and poo-poo so much, including the crowd reactions and saying guys aren't over. When people are yelling and they're chanting, "This is awesome," and "This is awesome," and holy shit. And so they haven't actually seen what it's like when people are legitimately losing their minds over somebody. And you can watch it on tape and you see it, but you can't experience it when it's on tape. And I mean, we still have all of the current people that'll, current people, as opposed to the past people. Current fans will pass the tapes around and say, "Look at those people going berserk in Shelby, North Carolina," or whatever, in 1986, but still without being in the middle of it. And you kind of got it. You went to some Smoky Mountain Wrestling stuff when you were young, but you still weren't even around for the fucking first run of that. But
remember, too, I got to really experience it. Our group, we had to get a police escort out of Louisville.
Well, yeah.
Because the fans, even though Tommy Rich was in the middle of the ring, bleeding a gusher, getting beaten by all the heels while the baby faces were handcuffed to the cage, eventually the fans got tired of yelling for Tommy and turned all their venom on us, on a section of fans cheering for the Smoky Mountain guys.
Because you were the only fans in the Louisville Gardens of fucking 40 people that came up on a bus from Smoky Mountain Fan Week cheering for the heels that were killing all these people, and they were going to go out of their fucking minds. Yeah. But it's hard, I know, to explain, but try to imagine. Holy shit, chanting over and over isn't people losing their minds over something. It's they're losing their minds over a big bump or a spot, or boy, did you see that guy fall off the cliff, or wow, look at that car wreck if we're watching NASCAR, or holy shit, the backboard shattered, or whatever the fuck. But the people, if you chant something, you're in on it. You're chanting something to get the crowd in on something that you're doing. You're not focusing your full attention on what's going on and living and dying by what's going on in the ring, as was traditional for almost 100 years until they decided they could do wrestling a better way. I've said it so many times, there didn't used to be quiet spots in matches. If they were down on a fucking mat in a headlock, unless you were at a high school gym somewhere, in front of 300 or 400 people, if you were at a regular show, the fucking people were either cheering for the babyface to squeeze the fucking headlock harder or taunting the heel for not being able to get out of the headlock. And of course, the guys in the ring were helping that out by working the headlock, and we're just laying there. But there was not any quiet spots in the match. It was steady noise from the people that were invested and involved. They weren't just waiting to see moves. They didn't care if the babyface did any fucking moves as long as he won. If he punched the fucking heel and knocked him out in one punch and boom and walked off from him, that would get a huge pop. But if the heel did the same thing to the babyface, people would either boo, riot, attack him, or want their money back. They didn't care how great the match was as long as the fucking babyface won and got even with the heel for whatever the fuck he had done. But they were invested in that story, that quest, that the match that they were having, to the point where they were making noise pretty steadily throughout the whole thing. And then when something big happened, the roof would come off the place. Not in every single match, although once again, Southern crowds were always great because they liked wrestling matches and they'd make some fucking noise even from the preliminaries. But when you got with the main event guys like JYD in New Orleans, it literally was people going batshit crazy, loving somebody, coming to the fucking ring. They were jumping up and down. They were cheering. They, men, women, children, all ages, whatever. And the same thing when the heel came out, it was genuine hate. Not just heat, but genuine hate. We hate this motherfucker. We want to see him injured and hospitalized. And then when you had a hot finish going and the people were really going insane, then you saw people going berserk and they would throw babies in the air if the babyface won, or if the heat got too bad and the heel got too much heat and a really raw fuck finish and they were mad at him, that's when they would quiet down. And old Dennis Conner, the first thing he warned me about in Louisiana, he said, watch the silent heat. That was the silent heat was what a crowd would do when they'd got to the point where they were so fucking mad that they stopped yelling and basically they were looking around for shit to come in the ring with. Silent heat was when all that stopped and somebody could very well get fucking cut or stabbed or fucking jumped or whatever, and you need to get the fuck out of there. Which is only topped by complete silence of shock and astonishment when Koloff pinned Bruno, but that was in class by itself. But I'm just saying, that's what a lot of the old fans and the old performers miss about the shows today, that the young wrestlers can't understand it because they weren't able to experience it. They just see it on tape. The young fans can't, same reason, is people are just not into this shit anymore. As far as legitimately, passionately, emotionally invested. I used to tell the guys in Ring of Honor, slow down. You don't need to do so much because they can't scream any louder. But that's what they were doing. They will yell and scream and urge you on to do more moves. But nobody's living or dying on who wins or loses the fucking match. And nobody legitimately is mad and hates anybody in the fucking match. And nobody is legitimately loves or admires or respects to the level of Jesus Christ, Santa Claus, and the fucking New Orleans Saints, they're top baby faces. Sure, they like them, and boy, they get real upset when you fucking knock them on the fucking internet. But I wonder if anybody would actually goddamn want to knife their opponents. So we can never replicate this again. It's another one of the things we've lost. But until you were able to feel that kind of emotion in wrestling, and boy, when you go out in a building like the Charlotte Coliseum and there's 12,000 of them, and they either love the fuck out of you or they're screaming for your fucking skin, that was atmosphere. We can't replicate it. We're never going to get it back, and that's what I miss, and that's why I poo-poo a lot of this shit, because, what the fuck? Without that level of commitment from the people, you're just going out and fucking doing moves. We never got the sense that we were going out and performing moves for people when we were doing it. I never did. The Midnight Express never did. Most people I worked with in the ring never did. We're going out and having a match, and these people are fucking hooked up in it, but it wasn't predicated on the moves. It was predicated on the concept. We're going to beat the shit out of this fucking guy for a while. And then the boys would do a variety of devastating looking moves to him. But the concept was we're beating the shit out of this fucking guy.
let me just jump in a couple points, but one specifically. Some people are going to hear this and go, well, come on, Cornette. Everyone knows it's fake now. Everyone knows it's fake. You can't expect people to believe in it. And that's not really what it's about, because as I've always said, I always question what percentage of these audiences thought it was all on the up and up. It's about losing yourself in it as much as it is about thinking it's all real, correct?
Yeah, well, almost. Quite a bit. There was some element to the fact that when it was possible for human beings to believe that this was real, which up until the fucking 90s or so, there were definitely, and I've had interaction with many of them, there was some people that still believed everything. And remember I told you that fucking security guard at the Norfolk Scope at the Ring of Honor show in 2013 said, I saw that. He had been working security there for 40 years, since the days of Wahoo and fucking Valentine, right? And he was talking to me. He said, I remember when you guys used to come and Wahoo used to go down to I think it was the boathouse in Virginia Beach, and he'd hit those guys with chops and they'd fly over the fucking tables. He said, I just watched that documentary they had on TV last year on Learning Channel about how it's all fake. And it was a revelation to this guy in 2012. But the point is, yes, there were some people that believed it and that helped. But more importantly, it was because of the way it was presented and the way that the guys came off. And yes, now that it's just been so overexposed and overanalyzed, and you can get every fucking, detail about how the businesses worked, you can't recreate that atmosphere because it's just lost. And that's to our detriment. And that's why I've often questioned, why do we have wrestling anymore? Why do you have matches anymore? If you're not trying to make people believe you're really having a fucking fight, there's no reason to do it. And really, that's my overriding prevailing opinion. However, you can still make some people believe in you. Brock Lesnar does. He may be Freddie Faker in the WWE, but nobody wants to fuck with him, because he really can fuck you up, and they know that. Well, a lot of the guys used to be like that. That's where the guys in Mid-South Wrestling subsisted on that, because in Mid-South Wrestling, even if you knew wrestling was fake, you weren't going to tell Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Steve Dr. Death Williams, Ernie Ladd, Nikolai Volkov, etc. So that's when the Midnight Express and I came along. They said, well, we can tell you you're fake, and we can beat you up too. That's why we had so much heat. But it just...
But, we started this talking about Junkyard Dog. And we could talk about you in the Carolinas. And I think one of the big things that has been taken out of wrestling that makes people not invest so much in the wrestlers. I mean, people are into the people behind the wrestlers. They're not really into the wrestlers so much.
Yeah.
Junkyard Dog did local promos each week on TV. And people started to believe in him and his words. How effective would the Midnight Express and you have been? You guys still would have been effective if you never did a local promo or never did any promos on TBS. That element of wrestling is gone. They don't have these guys out there talking right to the camera, talking right to the people at home, saying things that people either believe in or really want to see you get your ass kicked. There are people who knew wrestling wasn't legitimate and still wanted to see you get your ass kicked in the 1980s because of those promos, and that's gone.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because when you mentioned JYD's promos, the reason, and you said now the people are more interested in the folks behind the character, right? Is the way you put it, or the person behind the wrestler.
Yeah.
There was no difference then. There was no person behind JYD except for JYD. At least not that anybody could ever talk to or see. And actually, goddamn, he said the same shit in the locker room he said on promos. So did Hacksaw Butch Reed. When the babyface and the heels were together, he and Dog would sit on the other sides of the locker room in a friendly way, but on opposite sides of the locker room, cutting promos in each other. And Butch is like, you better quit selling them wolf tickets. I'll have to come over there. Whatever the fuck. And then they do the same thing on fucking promos. I'll beat the black off of you, JYD. They were who they were supposed to be. And that's the fucking difference. These guys have somehow come under the delusion that they are not who they're supposed to be, that they're who they really are. And nobody gives a fuck. Let me tell you, nobody gives a fuck for 95% of you if they knew who you really were. because most of you are a bunch of boring, bland fucks that play video games instead of chase pussy and have no idea how to fucking make your way around the world. So that's the thing. We don't pay to see fucking or get excited about seeing normal fucking people. Ned from the mailroom doesn't get to star in a TV show and people don't buy his t-shirts. If you want to be somebody on television, be a star, be an athlete, be a fucking celebrity, movie star, whatever the fuck, be somebody. And if you're going to be somebody, don't play somebody, be somebody. Then you might be more over than the rest of the pack here. But as I said, we can't recapture that feeling because we've told them too much. We fucked up. That's why I've said all along that this would end badly. Now it's the guys going out and doing dangerous stunts so people will cheer the moves and the falls instead of the individuals. But you can still make people believe somewhat in you, i.e. MJF, i.e., as we mentioned, and we'll talk about here in a second, FTR, at least picking up a turd by the clean end on All Elite Wrestling television. But don't tell me that all these people are going crazy and berserk and all these guys are so over, because I've seen it and it ain't happening and it ain't going to again, because we shit on all that and we threw it away. But when you see people jumping up and down and fucking willing to go to jail to get the heel, or as I've mentioned before, that time at the Louisville Gardens when the woman went into labor and was on the stretcher and would not let them take her to the hospital until she saw whether Bill Dundee beat Jerry Lawler, that's when you're over. So I ain't impressed.
But to my earlier point, one of the big things missing from wrestling, which gets people over, are promos, local promos and just generic promos for a national audience. The other thing is, in terms of the actual matches, there's nothing against high spots. I mean, if you go back far enough, the flying tackle was a high spot. It's about how you apply them and when you apply them. You have a lot of people now who go to wrestling shows to see great matches, not to see matches between individual people that they can lose themselves in. And when you have a style of match, which is just spot, 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 and you can make the argument, well, that's what that audience wants, so it works for them. If it's just spot, 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 that's what they're reacting to. They're reacting to the match. They're reacting and chanting, this is awesome, to what's happening in the match. But there's nothing like being in a crowd when a babyface finally gets up after getting their ass kicked for a while and throws a punch, and the whole crowd, woof, whatever that sound is that everyone makes. Like being in the middle of that, that's a feeling. I mean, when you're in the crowd, you can feel it. I can't even imagine what that's like in the ring when you're throwing those punches and you hear that crowd. But it's the style of wrestling. They've taken local promos and promos out of wrestling. Everything is now just about the match.
And you were right then when they that's the match they give the people because they think that's the match that those people want, and that's the match that those people want. That's just not the match that all those people who aren't there wanted. So if the only thing you serve at your restaurant is a shit sandwich, the only customers that you're going to get is people with a taste for shit.
Yeah. That's a nice way to put it. Yes.